Hey everybody, welcome back to Here Pal Here. My name is Pal. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about this idea that there can be one guitar to rule them all. You may have seen several of these kinds of videos on YouTube before, where somebody will make the case for a particular type of guitar or model of guitar to be kind of better than all the rest. And sometimes people will swear by the Telecaster as being the greatest guitar of all time, or the Les Paul, or the Strat, or take your pick. People can have their favorites, and I'm going to be talking about that and sharing my thoughts. Basically, I kind of think it's like a funny thing. I think it's a little bit silly, but at the same time, I do enjoy watching these videos because I always kind of like hearing what people use as their reasoning for why they're making the case for that particular guitar as being the best. And I had a funny thought that I wanted to kind of share with you guys and say that in a way I believe this to be true, but in a way I also think it's kind of preposterous. And so I will somewhat jokingly make the case that this is the guitar to rule them all, better than every guitar ever. And obviously I'm kind of joking around, but this is the very first guitar that I ever bought. It is my Yamaha SE350. And basically, the reason why I say that it's the one guitar to rule them all is because it's the first guitar that I got, and it's what allowed me to start on my journey of guitar playing. So for me, it's very near and dear to my heart. To somebody else, it could be a really kind of inexpensive, or you can use the word cheap, Strat copy knockoff by Yamaha, like a standard hum single, super Strat style type setup. But for me, it's definitely what allowed me to start learning how to play guitar. I learned how to play pinch harmonics on this. I learned how to do, all the kind of stuff, the basic things. I learned how to play all of the Black Sabbath songs that I learned with my friends in college on this guitar. I learned how to do some of the tapping from, the eruption solo, like on this guitar. Like people showed me how to do volume swells on this guitar. Like I learned so many things, in different chords, and I've written so many songs on this guitar, and I love this guitar. And I think, I kind of want to like have this video be kind of two parts. One is I'm going to tell the story of how I bought this guitar. And two is really just kind of finish up this idea that there can be one guitar to rule them all. The reason why I kind of think it's preposterous and what I want to say is that I think it's kind of a silly idea, is that there are so many counter examples of people who can pretty much sound exactly like themselves on whatever guitar they're playing. I've seen clips of Eddie Van Halen playing a Telecaster, and he still sounds like Eddie Van Halen. People have routinely said in interviews, like many famous guitarists got a chance to play through Eddie Van Halen's rig, for example, and they still sounded like themselves. They didn't sound like Eddie Van Halen. Look at somebody like Jimmy Page. We probably most closely associate his sound with like, the Les Paul through, a Marshall or something like that. But at the same time, the first album, like it was done on a Telecaster, and he still sounded like Jimmy Page. He still sounded like himself. I think like when you see Hendrix playing on a Strat versus when he's playing on a Flying V, like it's still Hendrix. Like when you see Greg Koch playing a Telecaster, it's still him. And when he's playing a Les Paul or a Strat, like it's still him. You see him playing on a Gretsch, it's still him. Like, and then the same thing, like as far as different, genres and styles, like these guys who can be like a chameleon. I mean, I'm fairly certain that somebody like Guthrie Govan can pick up this guitar or that guitar or any guitar, and he will still sound amazing, and he'll still be able to do like what it is that he does. I don't think like there's any one particular guitar that is the guitar for a sound or a genre. And I think it's kind of like a marketing gimmick in some way for people to kind of justify buying more and more guitars and getting more and more different sounds, when really you need to look inward to look and find those sounds. That's really the message of the video, I guess. That's not to say that I only have one guitar. I do have multiple guitars because I certainly kind of was chasing that kind of sound, once I had actually started learning how to play and being able to, I think, be pretty decent on the instrument, I did look for different sounds, and I do feel inspired to play different kinds of things on different guitars. So I'm certainly not knocking it totally, and I do think there are some kinds of, you know, vibes you get from certain types of instruments, and I think that's cool and it's fun and whatever. But I think my message to anybody who's watching this, especially if you're starting out and if you're new to playing, or if you don't have the wherewithal to have more than one guitar, is that I want to focus on the importance of having a guitar, of having one guitar. Your one guitar can rule them all, in the sense that it's the most important thing is to get a guitar. If you want to play guitar, you have to have a guitar. So if you are going to be like Mike Stern and play the same guitar for, you know, whatever it is, like 30 something years, like, he's amazing. And I don't think he needs a different guitar per se. And many people don't need, you know, you really don't need more than one. If you feel inspired and you feel like you can play anything you want on your own guitar, then that's all that you need. You don't need any more. So I think that's kind of the first half of the video. And then the next half, I just want to tell you guys the story of how I ended up with this guitar. So it's kind of a funny story. I feel like I came into guitar playing kind of late. I very distinctly remember wanting to play guitar from a very, very early age. I was kind of obsessed with the sound of guitar and wanting to kind of feel that joy of playing guitar. My dad listened to a lot of kind of like, you know, 60s, 70s rock music. And we listened to a lot of different things in the household, but I'll save that for another video. But we listened to a lot of rock music. And I remember, you know, cranking the radio with a lot of like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, you know, things like that. There were a bunch of Hungarian bands that we also got to hear with some phenomenal guitar playing. I just very, you know, distinctly remember kind of like playing air guitar, or like rocking the broom, you know, at home, like listening to these songs, probably as young as maybe like 8 or 9 is probably when I first remember wanting to kind of like, you know, get a guitar. And I remember some of the album covers that had kind of like a big impact on me. There was a Deep Purple album that my dad had, and I think it was a greatest hits album. If I can find it, I'll put it on the screen so you guys can see it. But I'm pretty sure it was like a greatest hits album, and there was a Strat on the cover of it, and it was like this purple kind of backdrop or something, if I remember right. I'll dig it up if I can find it. And I just thought it was so cool, like just the Stratocaster and the lines and everything, and it just looked so cool. I was so enthralled by that album cover. I very distinctly remember that, and just hearing songs like Child in Time, and a few other things, and just like Ritchie Blackmore soloing like on Child in Time. That's just insane. Like I just remember like cranking the stereo. My dad would listen to music really loud in the house. It was really cool. And we would just sit there and I would be rocking out. And I could never even kind of imagine the stuff he was doing, because it was just like floating, and just like, it felt like there was just like that solo would just like spiral upward and upward and upward, and it never comes down. It just always keeps going like higher and higher. And I just remember that feeling of being a little kid, like listening to that song and just being absolutely bonkers for it. I mean, I just wanted to play guitar so bad. And then later on, there were like other things, but I really got into Led Zeppelin as well, kind of early high school. I think I was probably in like maybe 8th or 9th grade. It was probably like right at the start of high school. I remember, I mean, I would say I was like kind of like a casual Zeppelin fan. I had just heard them on the radio and stuff. Like I would listen to like classic rock radio a lot. And, I probably knew just like a couple of their hits, but I never really like thought much about it. It was just like, okay, cool. There's like Live and Love and Made, or, some song like that would be played on the radio. And I remember this one time I was, like I say, probably in like 8th or 9th grade, we were going to go on a trip somewhere. And the night before, we were all supposed to go to sleep really early so we could wake up early. And my parents put us to bed early, and I just couldn't go to sleep. It was like ridiculously early. I forget exactly the details around it, but it was like probably like summertime or something. And we were going to go somewhere for like a long weekend. And I just remember that it like wasn't even dark or anything yet. And we were supposed to be in bed, and I just couldn't fall asleep. And then finally, like once it had actually gotten dark, I went downstairs, and I think everybody else by that point was probably asleep. But I turned on the radio and I put on headphones, and they were playing like a whole bunch of Zeppelin stuff. And there was it was like a Zeppelin marathon or something. So I just sat there listening with headphones to like a bunch of Zeppelin stuff, and Dazed and Confused came on. And I just remember hearing that and just being like absolutely blown away. I think it was partially because of the headphones and all the swirling stuff and like the violin bowed stuff and just kind of the rawness of it, and just like it was scary. I mean, it was like kind of terrifying. I was like hearing it as a kid and just thinking like, wow, this is like something I want to be like in, you know, like this is cool. Like it was terrifying. It was scary. So in a good way. So anyway, so I got really kind of obsessed with wanting to get a guitar, and I bugged the crap out of my parents. I mean, I would just like constantly tell them like, oh, okay, I want to get a guitar, I want a guitar, I want a guitar. But by that point, like I was like, you know, really into video games, and like my brother and I were like just like game junkies. So like every dollar I ever earned from like shoveling snow or like mowing the, you know, lawns for like the old lady across the street or whatever, like we would you know, we would just spend it on video games. And I just remember like there was this pivotal moment. I was like 15, and I just remember thinking like I got really angry with my parents. I was like, they're never gonna buy me a guitar. Like they're just jerks. Like they're not gonna do it. And then like I had almost like this light bulb moment of like, you know, like I just have to buy a guitar for myself. This is like ridiculous. Now, of course, looking back on it, I think the reason why they didn't buy me the guitar is A, because they weren't rich, and B, because they saw that all the effort I put in went into video games instead of, you know, like maybe perhaps saving some money to buy a guitar. Of course, now I only see this in hindsight, but at the time I just remember being really angry. And so I just kind of started saving my money, and I just decided that like I'm going to buy a Les Paul. I was obsessed with Led Zeppelin by that point. I mean, I like sat with the VCR and like recorded, they played the Song Remains the Same like concert. And there was like a behind the music of Led Zeppelin back on MTV back in the day, and I recorded it onto videotape, and I probably wore that thing out, man. I watched that videotape so many times that The Song Remains the Same. I tried to stop it at all the commercials and everything. It was really funny. And yeah, so anyway, so I wanted a Les Paul. I decided I'm gonna buy a Les Paul. Like that's my guitar. Like Jimmy Page was my guitar hero, like idol, whatever you want to call it. And I said I'm gonna buy a Les Paul. Now at that time, I think probably like a Les Paul Standard, this was like back in like the mid 90s. I think the price for one of those was probably, if my memory serves me right, maybe like $1,200-$1,300, something like that. And I mean, you have to realize like I was like the only money I was making, like I had no allowance basically, like, you know, it was like a couple dollars maybe for an allowance, and pretty much like I earned all my money at winter, like shoveling snow for the people in the neighborhood or like mowing lawns in the summer. That was pretty much it. So so I just started saving money, and I just stopped buying video games. And basically, you know, at some point, I remember it was like a few months of saving my money. You know, it was quite a few months actually. It was probably like half a year or so. The next kind of, you know, year, my dad, it was like just before my 16th birthday, my dad says to me, yeah, hey son, you know, like I can see you're saving your money, you know, like you're gonna buy a guitar, that's cool. And I was like, yeah, you know, and I'm kind of like distrustful, you know, in a way, like just like, yeah, old man, what do you want? And this is hilarious to me now looking back on this. But so he says, what are you gonna buy? And I'm like, I'm gonna buy a Les Paul. And he's like, oh, wow, okay, that's an expensive guitar, huh? Right? And I was like, yeah, it's expensive. You know, he's like, how much is it? So I'm like, you know, it's $1,200 or whatever it was. I don't know, $1,300. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, how much money have you got saved up? You know, and I probably had like maybe like $100 saved up or something like that, maybe $90. I don't know. And he's like, you know, it might take you a little while to get all the money together, don't you think? And I was like, yeah, you know, like, so what? Like, I'm going to do it. And I just remember him like kind of like so gently, like my dad's not a gentle person usually. So like this, in hindsight, this is so funny to me. It's probably like the most kind of like loving thing that my dad ever did for me. Like I'll remember this probably forever. But so he says to me, he's like, well, you know, could you maybe buy something else? Like, and I was like, no, like, you know, like, why would I buy anything else? Like, I want that. And and he says to me, you know, like, well, you know, like, how much could you buy like just some other kind of guitar, like for maybe like a used guitar, like, or like just some other kind of electric guitar? And I was just like, okay, like, you know, I'd been flipping through like music catalogs and stuff at that point, and I saw like you could probably buy like a used electric guitar, like a cheap one for maybe $150 at that point or something. So I'm like, yeah, maybe like $150. And he's like, okay, so like, you're already pretty close to that. Like that's more reasonable. That's kind of like attainable. And I was just kind of like, well, yeah, but I don't, I want a Les Paul. And so he says to me, he's like, yeah, okay, but just think about it like this, right? Like you could buy one of those guitars and then start playing now. And then you could start learning and then, get really good. And then when you're much better and you've been able to save more money and whatever, then you can, get the guitar that you really want. And then if you find out, for example, that you don't like it or whatever, then you haven't put in all this time and money into this dream that is not really for you, and you can just start on it sooner if it is what you really want to do. So I was just kind of like, like the old man's got a point there, like I just didn't really think of it like that until he said that, and then I was like, okay, yeah, like that's a good point. Like I'll start looking around for some used stuff. So like, I saved some more money, and I think really it was just like my parents, they just wanted to see that I was serious about it. And then they were, kind of happy to help me. So then, like probably like another month goes by or something. And he's like, okay, son, like, let's go get you a guitar. Right. So, and they're going to help me out. So now like the whole family, I have two sisters. I have a brother, I have an older brother. The whole family, mom, dad, everybody, we get in the car, we drive to this place. I'll never forget it. It was the Danbury East Coast Music Mall. It was in Danbury, Connecticut. And we get into East Coast, and we go into the store, man. And I just remember being so intimidated. I didn't know how to play the guitar at all. The only experience I had with even like coming in the vicinity of a guitar was like, or touching one, was basically like I had an uncle who had an acoustic, and he didn't really play. Like he just kind of like probably bought it at a tag sale or something, and he just liked he loved guitar music as well too. We would like rock out at his house like all the time too, listening to like Leonard Skinner and Deep Purple and all this kind of stuff like there too. And he had an acoustic, and like he could play maybe like Iron Man on like one string, something like that. And I just remember like getting to plunk on it every once in a while, and I couldn't do anything, and he didn't know how to do it, anything on it either. So it's not like I really learned how to play anything. And we get into East Coast Music Mall, and my whole family's in there with me. It's like I'm so embarrassed as a teenager. It's like I was like 15, just under 16 years old, and I remember it was just like just days I think before my birthday, of 16th birthday, and the guy like behind the counter comes out, and he's like a nice, helpful, sales guy, and typical guitar store employee. I'll get to that in a little bit. He's like, hey, like what's going on? How can I help you? And it's like, oh, I want to get a guitar, and he's like, okay, well, what's your budget? And it's like, well, we don't have much money. Okay, well, I'll show you, kind of like the budget stuff. So he takes us to like the back corner of the store. And, there's beautiful Les Pauls and Strats and everything, like anything you could ever want. And we go to the back corner of the store, and I'll never forget it. Like he shows me, he's like, okay, this is the kind of stuff that, will probably fit your budget. And there was just like one little, like, it was like one of these like pyramid rack kind of things, and a couple guitars behind it mounted on the wall. It was like all the used stuff. And most of the guitars were, between like $100 and $200 on that pile. And I just remember looking at it and just thinking like every single guitar there was so ugly. Like I hated every single guitar on there. It was like all like stuff that I was just certainly not into. It was like the pointy, BC Rich, like Jackson, kind of pointy guitars that I was not into. I was into like the very much like the classic kind of like classic rock 60s, 70s kind of stuff. And that's what I wanted. So to see all these things that weren't, what I was looking for, I was kind of like, oh man, like this sucks. Like this is all I can afford. And then I spied this guitar, and I was like, oh, it's like, it kind of looks like a Strat. Like it's got like a non-pointy headstock. Like it's got the kind of like, classic Strat, kind of vibes. I'm like, this is good. It's not very ugly. It's like, I wasn't really into like the super dark look, and, but I was just like, okay, like that guitar, that's the least ugly one in the pile. That's the one for me. So I'm like, well, that one looks, kind of like not too ugly. like, okay, that one's good. So the guy takes it off the wall. He's like, okay, yeah. He's like, you want to try it? And I'm just like, no, like, I don't want to try it. Like, I can't play anything. I don't want to embarrass myself any further. Like my my whole, family's there. Everybody's like looking at me, like probably the guy's laughing at me or something. I don't know. So, so when I say no, my dad says yes, he wants to try it. So I'm just like, okay, thanks, Dad. Like, so the guy's like, okay, cool, let's plug it into an amp. And being the typical guitar store employee, like, to somebody who doesn't play at all, like, I thought like it was Hendrix sitting in front of me. This guy was amazing. He plugs it into an amp. He just starts ripping it up. He's playing all these cool like pentatonic licks everywhere. He's tapping and he's hitting the whammy bar. Everything's going crazy. I'm just like, oh my God, like this is amazing. I'm just like, this is incredible. The guy's awesome. And then he's like, okay, now you try it. And I was just like, oh man, can it get more embarrassing? Like this is just, I'm like probably sweating, like whatever. So anyway, so he gives me the guitar. I pick it up, and I don't know how to play anything. I just literally go like this. He gives me a pick. I think he gave me a pick. Anyway, I just go like this, like that was it. And maybe I actually fretted a note. I don't remember. And and I'm just like, okay, cool. Like I want to buy the guitar. Can we get the hell out of here? Like I was just so like embarrassed. So it was hilarious. And so then, the guy's like, okay, cool. Like you want an amp? And it was like, yeah, but like the money I had was probably, it was like not even enough to cover the guitar. And then to get an amp, it was like, that's where my parents were going to help me. They were going to like loan me the money to get an amp, and then I would pay them back. So basically, my dad like is like, okay, cool. Like what kind of amps do you have, for like beginners or whatever, this price range. So they give me this like Fender, well, it's not a Fender, it's a Squier, little 15. I think it was the Frontman 15 or I forget what it's called. I think it was Frontman 15. Anyway, it was like this tiny little solid state, 8-inch little speaker, no reverb, kind of little solid state amp. And, the guy plugs it in. I remember the amp cost $89.99 if I remember right, or maybe it was 95. I don't remember. It was $90 basically. And then the guitar was like 120 something or 130 something if I remember right. And I remember my dad was actually really cool. He bargained the price down because we were paying for a new amp. So the guy gave us like a couple bucks off for the guitar. So, it was like I ended up having to borrow maybe like 75, 80 bucks from my parents, I think, something like that. And then I slowly paid that back for them. So that's the story of my first guitar. And I love this guitar, and I still use it to this day. You guys have seen it in videos and stuff. And I still think it sounds great. And it has allowed me to learn all the stuff that I know how to do pretty much. Like, I mean, a few things I have developed after that, but like the basics of what I know on the guitar and what I love about guitar, like it all happened on this guitar. And I just think it's so cool. And, I'm just grateful to like my parents for helping me to not wait forever. Like at that rate, I mean, it would probably take me like another 5-10 years to get a Les Paul. And who knows if I would have even, kept playing or whatever. Although I was pretty driven, so maybe I would have. And maybe I would have realized sooner that I should probably just buy a cheaper guitar, but who knows? And, they helped me out, and it was really cool. And, yeah, I just wanted to share that story with you guys. I think it's kind of funny. I realize this video is probably way too long, but, I just want to say, like, if you are starting out and you only have one guitar, there's nothing wrong with that. Your one guitar can rule them all. You can learn everything you need to learn on the one guitar. You can play different genres. You can do different styles. Obviously certain things lend themselves maybe a little bit easier to certain things, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. And it doesn't mean you should give up. And I just want to be kind of like encouraging to everybody that like, yeah, you can do it on whatever you have, and you don't need to always be looking for the next piece of gear. Like you can just learn on what you have, and you can do it. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hope you enjoyed the story and the memories of my embarrassment there, but ultimate happiness coming from that moment. And yeah, if you have any funny stories about how you got into guitar, or how you got your first guitar, or what your first guitar was, please do leave a comment and let me know, because I just love hearing kind of the origin story of people. And it's kind of funny whenever you see like an interview with a famous guitar player, they'll always ask like, how do you get into music? So yeah, anyway, that's it. And I want to thank everybody who has already subscribed to the channel. The channel's been growing awesome. It's been so cool seeing so many new people come. And thanks so much for everybody who's helped, promote our giveaway, the coconut pick giveaway. It's still ongoing. I have not yet hit 200 subscribers, but I'm getting very close. And thanks a lot to Andy Dion doing the live stream recently and giving a shout out on Lori's Mishmash as well. The contest is still open. Drop a comment on the video. I'll put a link in the description as well on the giveaway announcement video, and you can win your own coconut shell guitar pick. So that is still open, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's subscribed since then. Welcome to the channel, and I hope to see you in another video soon. And yeah, just thanks everybody, and hope to hear from people about your own stories and share them for others to enjoy below. Thanks. See you guys in another one. Bye. Take it easy.